You have to remove the second head in order to reactivate the areas where hair loss has occurred on your first head. I know. Give me a chance to explain. I am AQBS and this is Back to the Barber. My theory is if you can somehow revert your scalp back to its original state, pre-balding conditions, then your hair would autopilot regrow slowly over time, eventually arriving at the hair loss undetectable state. Truthfully, the scalp that is losing hair is not the same scalp as your previous scalp that was not. After years of natural restoration, I am convinced that it's not your original head that is losing hair, but the second head that you grew due to the immune response. It reminds me of the ancient Roman deity Janus. You know, that god with the two heads? But that's not the only similarities. Janus is a perfect analogy or mascot for men's hair loss in multiple aspects. And in this short video, you will see why I have adopted and incorporated it into my brand. I say there are 4 pathways or doorways to men's hair loss, with the root cause being the trigger. The first doorway is immune response. This is the slight itching, redness, puffiness, and acne many of us experience in hair loss. This is DHT's opener per se. Most of the negative action happens underneath the surface of the epidermis, so we won't really know this until hair begins to fall. The second doorway is the hormonal imbalance. This occurs as the inflammation and tension builds. The androgens, specifically DHT, accumulates in the scalp due to inflammation rooted in the trigger. I highly suspect that underneath the surface of the epidermis, a type of atherosclerosis or arteriosclerosis begins to occur where calcium and or plaque begins to take over the dermal environment and all the arteries within it. These liquids will solidify over time and act as housing for more bacteria, pathogens, and inflammatory agents. The shiny bald second head begins to take shape. The third doorway or pathway is vasodilation and circulation. Over time, as tension builds, plaque solidifies, inflammation is rampant, and DHT is pulled in the scalp develops a vascular issue where blood flow is severely restricted and compromised, which further causes hair loss. This is where minoxidil comes in, as it acts as an artificial follicular heartbeat, keeping the blood pathways open. And lastly, the mechanical physical changes such as calcification and fibrosis from acute and chronic inflammation, as well as the overproduction of skin layers, sebum oil that leads to tension, creates the seemingly permanent and non-reversible state of hair loss that we know today. Everyone who has experienced hair loss in some way or capacity will walk through one of these doorways or multiple, and once you reach this state, Janus is born, your second head. This deity Janus has 2 faces pointing in the opposite directions because it is looking at the past and the future simultaneously. It represents the many pathways that we can take in life, the beginnings and the endings, war and peace, fortune and famine, youth and old age. Just like in hair loss, our decisions in diet and overall health inevitably place us on one of these paths. I firmly believe that sensitivity to androgens may be a genetic factor, but going bald is not your final form. It is simply the result of the imbalance going on for so long that the follicles have nothing left to give. Your hair wants to grow, but the environment has to allow it. Ours doesn't, or not optimally in your case. Although the doorway or pathways of Janus tie into hair loss and its representation of youth, vigor, old age, and wisdom, it also ties into hair loss when the aging process is natural. But for many of us, I highly doubt that we were at the state of wisdom at 26 or even 36 for that matter when we started to lose hair. Natural aging is a blessing. Accelerated aging, even follicular aging, not so much. We want the hands of time to touch our bodies and our minds at the same time, not premature. There's a more important connection between this deity Janus and hair loss, and it's truly the reason why I've adopted it as a secondary icon for Back to the Barber. Its second head stands for the physical second head that you grew on top of your original non-balding head. It absolutely personifies our predicament in men's hair loss. My current sentiments and beliefs are, it's not the real dermal layers with the problem actually. It seems weird, but what I'm about to share could have only been discovered in the slow and methodical approach to reversing hair loss natty. All other methods are so fast that we cannot see what is really occurring over time. So bear with me. I'm going to try to explain this phenomenon the best way I can, as I have no reference points besides my own experiences. The dermal sections start out as one whole piece. There are no separations between them. The sutures fit nicely, allowing for skull growth, but they are not swollen, nor have they been stripped away or dissolved. The side of the scalp and the top overlay perfectly, as the gallia ring around the scalp is not enlarged, nor is it swollen or plaque filled. The arteries and vessels lay across the dermal layers with the hypodermis area, and there is no compression, no calcification, and no inflammation that will cause a kink in the hose, if you may. The dermal layers sit snugly on top of each other, and they are not hardened with fibrosis, nor are they tense due to a buildup of skin layers like a callus on top of the rightful layers. The nerves feed right into the dermal papilla, and the growth hormones are balanced. This was your pre-balding scalp. This is your wife or girlfriend's scalp. This is an omega scalp, one united, well-oiled machine where all of the parts work well together. Then something triggers the immune response and everything changes. Personified in this deity Janus, who January was named after, those two heads accurately represent what occurs in hair loss, especially in the Norwood forest and above. I call this the human growth pattern in reverse as conditions worsen. Really early on, I figured that the Hamilton-Norwood path was just the opposite of a natural human growth pattern, but it took over 2 years to figure out why. I think I have a decent theory now. I have come to believe that the various sections of the scalp, which are seemingly non-existent in a non-balding scalp, begin to separate as the underlying tissues become swollen and tense. These scalp sections are represented in the hair transplant industry. They have already discovered that there seems to be compartments in hair growth, but it was never explained why, just that the hair grows differently in each section. What I have figured out is those sections are the tissues and the bone sutures between the plates that become swollen, and literally due to their composition and their proximity to blood resources, they lose hair first or last. Also, when these sections change or degrade in separation, it makes it that much harder for the vessels to circulate. Imagine a blood vessel like the water hose laying on a flat surface. The water will flow easier than if you had the water source at the bottom of a hill and flowing upwards. It seems to be with the inflammation and segmentation of the dermal sections, the arteries have the same issue. No longer a relatively flat dermal layer, it's now attempting to deliver resources through a plaque-filled environment with extra skin layers and fibrosis, and those same blood vessels have their own issues with calcification. The thickness of the dermal layers cannot be ignored. I know this to be a fact, but truthfully, it's not even your real head or scalp that's the issue. It's the second head that has these problems. What is this second head that I speak about? Just as I mentioned above, your original scalp without deterioration could grow hair without a problem, but the more that your scalp tipped toward an alpha prostate dominated scalp from an omega uterine balanced scalp, the more that your head developed a second one. This second head is a result of acute and chronic inflammation that leads to the development of interstitial fluid, and I believe that fluid, along with cholesterol, aka DHT plaque, is the physical aesthetic that we call totally bald. Tension is tied into this because as the layers and sections separate and are swollen, the skin being hardened by fibrosis is overstretched but no longer malleable. This is why they have told you that hair loss is caused by tension. But tension is a side effect of scalp deterioration. Your skull doesn't grow, but your sutures have become inflamed. But most importantly, your plaque helmet expands. This has been the problem all along. Literally, there's another head that sits on top of your head from a scalp perspective. The plaque fills up the layers and the tissue changes almost separate the scalp nerves and blood vessels from the follicles, causing them to go offline. Think of it like pulling a cord out of the wall with your hand or dropping your phone in the bathtub. Overtaken by the fluid and plaque, the nerves go offline and the follicles are smothered. Think of it this way. You have a stopper in the bathtub, but the stopper is connected to a floating ball on top of the water. The string is only 4 inches. The water will keep running and filling the tub up, but once it gets over the 4 inches, something happens. That string will start to get tense, and as the water level increases, the tub stopper will slowly uncork until it pops out, and now that water will be released. Our toilets have a similar function with water levels and flushing. How does this relate to hair loss and the second head? Eventually, the cork pops out the follicle's bottom and it is separated from its nerves, blood vessels, and resources. In male pattern balding, this is very slow, to the point that we don't notice until the stopper has been released. The second head is not just the mechanical, physical changes of the original scalp, by the way, but the introduction of non-original substances that are alien to it, including gut biome. This entire time, I imagined that I needed to fix my scalp, and that is true. However, in all honesty, I needed to remove the second head created by the trigger and the immune response first, then recondition the scalp back to its original state. Maybe then I can begin stimulating regrowth with topicals along with DHT inhibiting. And if you don't know, DHT inhibiting is the industry code word for cholesterol production inhibiting. I did this backwards, but I didn't know. I believe if I've done this correctly, you can turn a Norwood 7 bald to an N2 bald within a year to a year and a half max. Basically a hair transplant, but no surgery, but I digress. Do you think that shiny spot in your crown is actually natural skin? It looks to be, but once you started purging and needing out what is underneath that spot, you will think differently. Here are a few pictures I took a few months back when I did what I call a violent purge. In this purge, I know that I lost about 35% of the new hair I grew, but I'm okay with that. I had to remove the second head in order to activate the areas where the hairs were not growing due to the influence of the second head overlay. As you know, when there is tension, oil, soreness, and thick skin, the follicles will stay in a telogen state until the environment changes. Once my hair went terminal, they will grow back. But the hairs that are stuck in villus will stay in villus as long as the second head is overlaying on top of it. Notice the bumps, acne, purge material, and skin erupting on the sides. But the top in this section has none of that. This picture is absolute gold to eyes that want to see. What is different about the sides than the top? In the top, I haven't kneaded out or purged what's underneath it. You can literally see the circle of plaque still underneath. It's giving me the most problems, but I'm not surprised. To the touch, the sides are now flat and the dermal layers seem to be normalized with the first head. Another phenomenal thing about this is when I roll the balayage tool across the sides, it really hurts. Unlike before, I barely felt it. The nerves come back online literally when you drain this stuff from your scalp. This connects why hair doesn't grow. There is no signaling due to the second head. It's your iPhone underwater. Also, that little circle there has no pus, no acne, and look, it has the least amount of hair. And guess what? When I roll over that area, I can feel a mass underneath, just like the sides used to feel like, and I feel no pain from the wooden roller. Once I get the masses of plaque and fluid from beneath it, and I redo the natural chemical purge again, it's going to look like the sides. I was looking for all that nasty stuff to erupt, and if it won't or it can't, I have more kneading work to do. The reasoning is simple. The second head doesn't allow anything in or out. Once it's removed, I can get deeper into the scalp to fix the root cause. This means that we have been trying to fix our scalp using topicals and playing addition when we were supposed to remove the second head created by inflammation. Once this is drained and purged from the scalp, The real original head and its balanced dimensions have no issues reconnecting and restarting the anagen growth process. The second head, plus the mechanical degradation such as the swollen gallia ring and inflamed skull sutures, have given us this impression that balding is forward only, future facing, such as the head of Janus. But that's not true at all. It's conditional permanency and just an illusion. The number one secret that would have the most impact on your hair loss restoration is to understand this simple fact. The dermal layers and the follicles are dormant but generally intact in androgenic alopecia. What is overlaid on top of them and within them, extra layers, DHT plaque, sebum cholesterol, fluid, is the cause of the telogen state and the fact that the topicals are barely working for you. DHT and 5-AR inhibitors are keeping what you have, but there is no automatic regrowth of dormant follicles and will never be unless the second head is removed. So how do we remove this second head to start the autopilot hair regrowth process? Here's a few things that I use, but again, it's not completed until I see the regrowth threshold activate all follicles. The percussion tool along with the balayage tool is good at breaking up the solid nature of this plaque and to start softening it a bit. If you dermastamp before you use cupping, it's like wet cupping, which is sponges out toxins, sebum, and DHT slowly from the scalp. Derma rolling is good, especially with a skin exfoliator, to strip away layers and to cause micro injury. Over time, the lipid system seems to be able to release some of this plaque, but it will mostly expel through the follicles and the sebum pores. Now that nameless violent purger that I use is still in development, and as you see here, it's done a number on my scalp at that time, but purposely. I noticed something very interesting about what was coming from my scalp. Besides a chalky, pasty, buttery eruption, there was a light pink fluid, not blood, but almost as if there was a bit of plasma inside of this fluid. Once it erupted to the epidermis layer, it turned dark and I can scrape it off. I also noticed that with hot water running down my face and head, the color was pretty obvious. My thoughts were, this is like the stuff that comes out of an injury. I believe that once you get deeper into the scalp layers after the plaque is expunged, you begin to extract the very substances that surround deep hidden injuries within that DHT has been trying to fix all along. The very injury that's created the second head in the first place. Once it's gone, true healing can start. My scalp is now thinner than it's ever been in 15 years. I know what happens next. Like Janus, you can have your eyes on the past or your eyes on the future. Use my past experiences and research to push yourself forward towards hair loss undetectable. The future is looking mighty bright. Like, subscribe, and comment, as iron sharpens iron, and we only have each other. And remember, if I can do it, you all can do it too. Let's get you back to the barber.